Thank you, and welcome to this meeting of the Constitution Committee on Monday the 18th of January. It's at 2 o'clock. We're just waiting for a couple of members to pop in to the meeting. So Leslie Williams has joined us. And we're currently missing Nigel Robbins. Colin, any indication if Nigel was going to struggle to make today's meeting?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm expecting him any time.
Okay. Right, I'm going to crack on. It is 2 o'clock. Everyone else is in the meeting, so I'm going to start for apologies for absence. There have been no formal apologies noted. Minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. Are you happy for them to be noted as a true record? Please show. We'll take thumbs up or hands up. Thank you. Moving on to public questions. Just checking to see whether there is any public questions have been received.
None received.
Thank you. Members' questions. Checking to see whether or not there's any members' questions have been received.
None received either.
Thank you. We're moving on to item 5, written answers to supplementary questions. I'm not sure who's due to introduce this. It'd be useful just to get background. So Rob or Sophie, you could just let us know how this has ended up here. I believe it was a council motion.
That's right. It was a proposal at the last council meeting that we look at specifying a time limit for publishing written responses to questions when we're not able to provide a verbal response at the meeting itself. So we have included within the agenda the proposed wording that would write that into the Constitution in the 2 relevant places.
Excellent, thank you. Now I understand this was Ian Doby and Kate Haig raised these 2 points. Kate is on the call today. Kate, you've got an opportunity to say anything you wish to add to what was originally written in the points that you raised. So Kate, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is quite a straightforward issue, really, that questions that are asked in public should have answers in public as well, and obviously a written answer directly to a member or even to all members is not exactly the same as that. I think, if we see a question on the record, we ought to be able to see the answer there too. So it's just about that bit of transparency. And just to add, Chair, although this relates to members' questions, I'd be really keen that this was also considered in future for public questions. Because very much the same principle applies, that a member of the public asks a public question, then the answer to that should be available to the public as well. And I think that would also help with clarity on issues about what's happened to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, so in the papers, I think there are suggested amendments.
That's correct, yeah. So it's the additions are in red on the agenda.
So in order to make it work for public questions as well, would those amendments work for both? Would they have to be?
I'm just looking. I'm sure there'll be an equivalent statement somewhere in the procedural standing orders. So I think in that case, we would need an additional phrase in that section, but that's easily done in time for the next council meeting, if that's the wish of the committee.
Excellent. Okay, so members will have had the suggested wording circulated and the suggesting addition that Kate's made, which sounds perfectly reasonable and consistent with the original intention. Anyone got any questions or comments? Colin?
Okay, my issue is the 4 weeks. And I can see that there may be occasions when questions may take longer than almost straight away. But when you've got 4 weeks written down in the Constitution, I fear that will be seen as the deadline, the norm, most people would probably think, well, I've got a couple of weeks to even start to think about it. I know it says that it should be provided within a reasonable time. My view would be, and particularly if we're introducing this to public questions, is that a written answer should be given within 7 days, because 7 days is the normal period to ask a question. So that seems to be a reasonable deadline to work to. And then it can have an additional statement that if it's going to take longer to answer the question than the 7 days, that within the 7 days, the questioner is written to and told when they can expect an answer. And actually, when you look at the Cabinet questions, given that Cabinet meets once a month, you might just as well ask another question because you'll receive it in much the same time. So I think I can understand that there may be occasions when it would take longer than 7 days, but then I think that ought to be, at least there ought to be acknowledgement, and that the questioner is told when they can expect an answer by. The other thing is, in having answered a question, and mostly it's officers that draft up the questions, it'll be fresh on their mind if they know that they need to answer it fairly quickly and within 7 days. And they may well have that easily to hand. And I just think that that would be a better way forward than the current wording.
Rob, was there a rationale by the 4 weeks?
I think we were working from the opposite point of view of the one Colin describes, which was essentially allowing it not to drift beyond that. But we do need to remember that we need to allow time not only for gathering the question, but for getting it published as well. But beyond that, I don't think so. No, I think it was just felt that we wanted to have a firm deadline in there rather than allowing things to drift on indefinitely.
What about if we were to make it 14 days? Would that cause us a problem?
That feels reasonable.
Lyndon.
Yeah, I think there are two matters here. One is providing an answer to the question. And I think, as you've just said, Lee, that would probably be appropriate as 14 days. And then there is a different piece of work, which is the publishing it as part of the document in the council's papers. And that probably could still be left to 4 weeks because you gather your questions, there might be an outlier, and you then publish that online as part of the papers for that meeting. So I'm wondering whether or not what we've just said couldn't be written, supplementary written answers will be provided to the questioner within 2 weeks and published as a supplementary document with the original meeting papers no later than 4 weeks after the meeting.
Wasn't expecting so much heated debate about this one, but nonetheless, here we are. Leslie.
Thank you very much. I seem to have lost the opportunity to raise my hand. I don't know where it's gone. I would have thought 4 weeks is a long time because when a question is submitted, you will know quite quickly whether or not it can be answered. And I would have thought the first thing to do would be to notify that it's going to take time to do it anyway, and then I would have thought 14 days. But letting the person asking the question out of courtesy, I would have thought it's the first thing to say, well, sorry, this is going to take time. Rather than say at the meeting, we're going to have to come back with a written answer. Or do both.
I fear we're in danger of overcomplicating an issue that doesn't need to be overcomplicated. I'm not entirely sure what the process is for publication. Maybe someone, Rob, can enlighten us as to the complexities or not of effectively adding a document onto the original meeting papers.
I may refer to Sophie because she's got more practical experience with this than me, but I think the issue here is that it is not necessarily the publication of this particular paper, but the other things that it would be accompanying may not be ready within the 2-week time scale. Sophie, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just to say to the committee that I think what Rob originally said about the 4 weeks was to not let this go on indefinitely. I think Lyndon has rightly raised that there's two separate issues here. One is to provide the written answer, and the separate thing is to publish the document. There's no complexity as such in publishing that document, but I think the 4 weeks was added just to make sure we didn't go any further than that before that document is published. And just to allow time for all the written answers to be collated from different departments and put together into a document.
Colin?
I would like to see that there was a response within 7 days still, but I'm quite happy for that to be, there should be a response within 7 days. And if not, the questioner will be told when the answer will be given. And then I think in terms of publication, I think all we need to do is to say that the answers will be published along with the council, the council or cabinet's documents when they go on. Sorry, I've lost. But in effect, it will be published along with the other documents, and then that covers you for when the publication is. But the answer given to the questioner, I think, should be 7 days, and if not, they will be told when to expect the answer, and that shouldn't be more than 14.
Kate?
Thank you. I think this has got more debate than I anticipated as well. I think when I read the amendment that the supplementary answer would be given within a reasonable time and then it would be published. That's how I read it. So I think it's reasonable to set, if members want to set a limit of that of being 7 or 14 days, and that's perhaps up to the committee. I can see arguments for both if we're going to get a fuller answer. But I had separated those two thoughts within that sentence, that the answer will be given quickly and then it will be published. And I think that might need some clarity then if members don't see it that way in what's on the paper. Thank you.
Nigel?
I think Lyndon's drawn a good distinction between the two activities that are necessary here, and I think his timescale is a reasonable one. I mean, we all know, in fact, from our experience at council and at cabinet, that wherever possible, answers are given to those meetings. We all want to do that. The reason why one's not able to do that is clearly because matters of complexity, matters of policy even, may have been raised, which do require time to reflect on and a considered response. And also, portfolio holders need to be consulted by officers before a final answer is agreed. So I think the timescale that Lyndon's indicated is a reasonable one, and everyone can then be quite clear as to the overall procedure needed. As I say, the number of times questions are not answered at meetings is quite relative to the number of questions that are asked is very few.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm not hearing a reaching of consensus, so I'm going to try and put something forward to there. I mean, my view on written responses is that they tend to be a request for complex or large chunks of data. On the whole, that's not always the case, but it genuinely tends to be that it is a data request from that point of view. Now, if you were to make a freedom of information request to the authority, I think we've got 21 days to respond before we even get into the issue of providing you with that data. So I do feel that 14 days response is appropriate. The issue around publication is, I must admit, I'm not entirely getting my head around how complicated that is. So I would stick to the proposal. Just looking up on screen, supplementary written answers will be provided within 14 days, published as a supplementary document for the original meeting no later than 4 weeks after the meeting, on the assumption that it can be done as quickly after the 14 days as possible. I think that is a reasonable place to go. Now, are there people who wish to dissent from that view and therefore vote against? Colin, any other dissenting voices? So in that case, I'm going to have to take it to a vote. All those in favour, please show. I think that's all members bar Colin. Those against? Is that against or an abstention, Colin?
So be it. I'm voting against it. I'm not unhappy, but I think it should be 7 days because that's the time you get to answer a normal question on the deadline. But, 14 is better than 4 weeks.
Cool. Okay, we're all agreed. Rob, did you get that in its detail?
I did, thank you. And can I just check that it's the committee's wish that we adopt a similar approach for public questions as well?
Yeah, no, I think there was general consensus that that would be a fair settlement.
And how will we make that known to the public?
I guess it will be included in that, all that sort of wording that sits on the document, I guess. They tend to have.
Will we advise somebody who puts in a public question that that's the process?
Well, let's remember that in the majority of cases, this won't apply because the answer will be provided at the meeting on the day and published with the minutes of that. So I guess where we had a circumstance where we weren't able to provide a response at the meeting and therefore this applied, we would let those individual questioners know when they could expect to receive the response by.
Cool. Okay, thank you for that. So that deals with agenda item number 5. Moving on to agenda item number 6. Monitoring officer changes.
I think this is a very straightforward one. As members will know, as from the 1st of January, Sarah Scott took up a new joint post as both Director of Public Health and Director of Adult Social Services. So the changes I've outlined here are simply to reflect that in the Council's constitution and make sure that the scheme of delegation is appropriately updated. Apologies, I've only just noticed as I've come to the meeting that the tracked changes that I'd made in the report haven't shown as we've translated this into modern.gov. So I'm very happy to talk you through those if you would like me to, but it really is just changing job titles in the relevant places.
Cool. Any comments on that one? No. Okay. Julie, do we have to vote on those or just note those?
You can just note those.
Julie noted. I'm not seeing any dissent on that front. That's it. The last item of business. Thank you all very much for your attendance this morning, this afternoon, sorry. Enjoy the rest of your day.